Football season is here, and though it was just day one of fall camp, it's evident why the expectations are so high for the University of Tennessee. It's your Thursday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Cain. Can't thank you enough for making us your first listen, making us your first watch each and every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. Big shout out to GameTime, where you can download the app, create an account, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Got a fun show coming up today. I have observations to get into and some key takeaways from Tennessee football fall. I keep trying to say spring practice. This is not spring practice. We are here. It is fall camp. Practice number one, observations, key takeaways, and what that means in terms of expectations for this football team. Had a chance to catch up with Matt Ray after practice out there on the indoor field yesterday, and we're going to play that clip and get some of his thoughts from day one of fall camp. And then, of course, we're going to get into an interesting article I found over at ESPN from Chris Lowe about schedules across college football and some noteworthy things from the SEC, and one specifically for Tennessee that's coming up next as we continue on here with Locked On Vols. You can watch us, listen to us, subscribe to us, download us, all that for free, and wherever you get your podcast. So my biggest takeaways from practice number one. And again, this is a little bit of what I said yesterday, but it's just so much different now than where it was. From a scholarship standpoint, this is the biggest team Josh Heupel's had in terms of scholarship players. Remember, all those guys leaving via the transfer portal at the time of the coaching change. It took a little while to build this team back up, and here you are. Josh Heupel and his coaches have said repeatedly throughout the offseason, and it's not to be bragging or anything, but this is the deepest roster. This is the most talented roster that they've had since being here. And they haven't been here a long time, but you're in year 4, and you're playing with more in the wheelhouse than you ever have. And you can see that just from the eye test. You know, somebody, asked, hey, after practice number one, who's the first 5 off the bus? And of course, the first 5 off the bus is kind of that analogy to where if you're playing a big time old school football game and you're riding on the bus, your football team riding on the bus to that next opponent's venue, the first 5 guys you want to get off the bus is the most daunting, scary figures to, really send some scare to your opposition and your opposition's fans. And Elijah Simmons is going to be on that list for me, of course. Ethan Davis is going to be on that list for me because I think he's done a great job transforming his body over the offseason. Lance Hurd is going to be on that list for me. I put Jacoby Thomas on that list because I think that he's a big presence at the safety position. I'll tell you somebody, at least, I don't think he's not going to play it all this year, but somebody that passes the eye test by a million is Jeremiah Hurd. Goodness gracious. Freshman for this 2024 class that's now on campus. He was a June enrollee. He's going to play offensive tackle. He will not be a factor this year, but the former basketball player, 6'8", about 300-ish pounds, a little bit less than that. Jeremiah Hurd looked really, really good. And I thought that he, probably looked from the eye test better than anybody. But that just goes on to further my point of this team looks different. This team looks like an SEC football program. This team looks like one of the best football programs in the country. And it might just be something simple to say, but again, that hasn't been like that here at Tennessee for quite some time. And it's kind of refreshing in my opinion. And so when you couple all that, you see a little bit from day number one, it just kind of goes and furthers the notion that, hey, the expectations are real for Tennessee. You're returning 3 starters on the offensive line, and you add Lance Hurd in there that might be better than any of them. It's almost like returning 4 starters on the offensive line. I know that he's not a starter. You have maybe the biggest playmaker on the field now. Your generational quarterback is here, and he's going to start his tenure as Tennessee's starting quarterback. You've got potentially a top 10 pick on the other side of the football in James Pearce that's going to get after the football and get after the passer. You got so many explosive playmaking opportunities out there on the outside of wide receiver and with Dylan Sampson in the backfield. There's a lot to like about this team, in my opinion. So those are some of my thoughts, leaving practice earlier on Wednesday, and some of my observations, of course, that I was able to take part in when I was out there. A couple of injury notes of note. Lance Hurd had a left knee brace on, and he was doing some things, but he wasn't doing a lot of the stuff that when the media was present out there. And again, all this is disclaimer that we get to see just a small portion of practice. So any of these guys that talk about injury-wise, they very well could be taking part in reps when we're not there. But, Lance Hurd wasn't doing an awful lot when we were there yesterday, and I haven't heard much about that. The fact that he's out there fully dressed like everybody else, and, in terms of helmets and all that, and, was out there in cleats and everything, that doesn't strike me as something bad. We'll keep an eye on him the next couple of days and see if he gets more work in there. But Lance Hurd was a bit limited. Mike Matthews was getting work off to the side. He was not getting a full go participation on day one. Cam Seldon had a red non-contact jersey on. That's expected. But Javonte Spraggins was full go. Cooper Mays was full go. Larry Johnson was full go. So pretty much a healthy football team outside of a couple here for practice number one. I thought the routes on air, quarterbacks to receivers, I thought the higher up the depth chart had a better day than lower down the depth chart. And let's be real. I mean, it was a little sloppy day number one, but it is day number one. You're supposed to get better and better and better and better as you go on. You're just trying to get back in the rhythm of everything. And there were some drops. There were some routes that were run wrong. But I did think that Nico and Gaston Moore threw the ball pretty well. Thought that Dante Thornton made a nice catch. Squirrel White made a nice catch. Chris Brazzell made a nice catch. Ethan Davis had one drop, but he had several nice catches. I thought when you got lower down the depth chart, however, that it wasn't as good. Again, take this with a grain of salt. This is practice number one, but the three receivers who up first there in routes on air with quarterback Nico Iamaleava was Bru McCoy on one side, Caleb Webb on the other side, and Squirrel White in the slot. I don't think Caleb Webb's going to be a starting wide receiver, but he was with the first group today. The second group was Chris Brazzell on the outside, Dante Thornton on the outside. It's going to be one of those two guys to start, in my opinion. And then Chaz Nimrod in the middle in the slot. I thought that was noteworthy, showing some versatility to his game. He's gotten a lot of praise the first couple of days of camp as well. And then the third group is Nate Spillman on one side, Nathan Laycock on the other side, and Braylon Staley in the slot. On the offensive line, again, grain of salt, but this is the quote-unquote first group that was out there during inside run. Because Lance Hurd wasn't doing an awful lot on Wednesday, it was Dane Davis at left tackle, Andre Carrick, who again, left guard, very much a question mark, going to be a position battle, but Andre Carrick won that job last year, and he was repping with the first team today, or yesterday, I should say, at left guard. Cooper Mays at center, Javonte Spraggins at right guard, John Campbell at right tackle. Behind those guys was Larry Johnson at left tackle, Shami Marov at left guard, Vyson Lang at center, Jackson Lampley at right guard, and Jesse Perry at right tackle. Jesse Perry is going to be a guy that I think can maybe slide inside and maybe get a look at some other positions. I don't think he's going to play this year, but they like Jesse Perry, and Jesse Perry is going to be a guy that I think is going to help this football team sooner rather than later. Might not be this year, but I'd watch for Jesse Perry over fall camp. I think he's in store for a nice little camp. A lot of circuits, a lot of circle drills, bag drills, work under the cages, backpedaling, run recognition, routes versus air recognition for the defensive backs. A lot of drilling for the defenders while we were out there. A couple guys that looked noticeably bigger. Tyree Weathersby has gotten bigger. Joshua Josephs has put on some pounds. Caleb Herring has put on some pounds. I think Jacoby Thomas is a real physical safety, and he looks like it for sure. Not many notes on the defense side of the football. Hopefully we'll get some more tomorrow. But anyway, pretty standard, pretty decent. Practice number one. It wasn't going to win any awards by any stretch of the imagination. It was not the crispest. Is that a word? Crispest? I don't think that's a word. It wasn't the sloppiest by any stretch of the imagination. It was day number one. And I'm intrigued to see how much better this team can get, each and every single day. But overall, decent day, and we'll be excited to see what they look like on a Thursday, and then, of course, on a Saturday and Sunday. A couple more practices this week as week number one of fall camp kind of continues to roll on. They were inside the entire time. The Haslam practice field was underwater on Wednesday morning because, well, it monsooned here in the Knoxville area Tuesday evening, but they were in the inside and the indoor, and they'll be back there tomorrow. And of course, hopefully they'll work outside as well. Hey, when we come back, I had a chance to catch up with Matt Ray shortly after practice was over on Tuesday. What were his thoughts on Tennessee's fall practice number 1. That is coming up next as we continue on here with a Locked On Vols. Want to say about our friends over at GameTime. GameTime is the place where you can buy tickets to all the events in your area, whether it's a sporting event at Thompson Bowling Arena at the Food City Center, maybe a football game at Neyland Stadium, maybe a baseball game at Lindsey Nelson, softball game at Sherry Parker Lee, whatever the case is sporting-wise in your area, but also could be concerts at TBA, could be at the Bijou Theater, could be plays at the Tennessee Theater, whatever the case is. You can buy tickets to your next entertainment event by using the GameTime app. It's for the procrastinators like you and me as well, and they're selling tickets up to the event and sometimes even an hour after the event has started. And when you go to the GameTime app that you can download for free, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Again, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $20 off your first purchase. You can check out the all-in pricing. Lowest price guarantee. That's the headliner there. Views from your seat, zone deals, flash deals, priority last-minute deals as well. All that on the GameTime app. Download GameTime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Day 1 of Tennessee football fall camp. I've about said spring practice, but it's fall camp.
It's here.
It's here. I got Matt Ray over here that's trying to do a regular contributor of Locked On Vols. Let's just kind of go through what we saw a little bit. I mean, it was day 1. They were in helmets, no shoulder pads. They were in T-shirts, shorts, not a lot of hitting or anything, but it was day 1. We got to see guys run routes on air, got to see some one-on-ones. Overall takeaways from day 1 of Tennessee fall camp.
Well, I think when you look at it, first thing that jumps right away is, you're talking about a program that's well established now under Josh Heupel. There was a certain level of intensity today.
No.
Guys expected to go full bore into this thing, and that's where Tennessee was at with it. Rodney Garner sets the tempo right away very early in every practice session. But Tennessee was a full go today, and I think you saw some guys, continue to step up. I thought James Pearce was a guy that right away took more of an active leadership role in that defensive line grouping. And I think that kind of speaks volumes to where Tennessee's heading moving forward.
It was Amari Thomas during media day that kind of said, obviously being asked about James Pearce and, what he's like on the field, his finesse. He talked about his strength that he noticed early on in his career, even when he wasn't playing much as a freshman. But he went on to say, now he treats everything like a pro. And not to say that he's a bad kid, because he's not a bad kid, but he's not he doesn't like talking to the media as much. He's kind of one of those guys, and that's fine. But I think now he kind of gets like, okay, this is going to be my last year. I potentially can be a top 10 pick. Want to go win games, obviously. It's a contract year for him, basically, and I think he's approaching it the right way. And you saw that at practice today, and, of course, that kind of reflects what Amari Thomas was saying yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Leading guys through drills, coaching guys like Jordan Ross up on what they're looking for in the drill, doing those types of things. You've got moving parts between each drill depending on what you're doing. You're under, you're over bags at times, you're pushing a sled at times. James Pearce grabs a sled, drags it out there so the drill can get going, so you're maximizing that time.
Yep.
Those are the things that a pro does, Eric. And I think you saw some of that from James Pearce today, and I think that's huge for Tennessee.
All right, so let's shift over to the offensive side of the football a little bit here. Everybody wants to know about Nico. How did Nico look? Again, Nico, in my opinion, looked fine. He made some throws.
Yep.
He had a couple of bad ones. He had some great ones. They were running routes on air. Again, shorts, just helmets is what it is. I thought, for the most part, the first couple of groups, like the Nico, Gaston Moore, the first 4 or 5 receivers looked pretty good. I thought as you went down the depth chart, it was a little sloppy. It's day 1, and that's okay. But I did see Ethan Davis drop one. I saw Ethan Davis make a great catch over the middle. Saw Chris Brazzell make an excellent catch on a post. Saw Squirrel White make one. I saw Dante Thornton crash into one of these pillars and hang on to the football. I thought the receivers did some nice things, and I thought Nico looked about as fine for day 1 as he could.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're going to have drops every football practice. So you're talking about fall camp. Practice number 1 right here. You're going to see that. Like you said, you saw Ethan Davis make a drop. You saw him make a great catch. I saw him catch a crossing route and accelerate down the sideline. And, man, you heard Josh Heupel talk about a drastic change for him yesterday when he was speaking to the media. And I think you can see that. Ethan Davis looks he's filled out even more. He looks healthier. Holden Stays made a couple of nice catches.
Talking about filling out, Holden Stays is a big dude.
Yeah, Holden Stays is a big dude. Those tight ends, they can help Tennessee this year. That's the way that a tight end room should look. So there's a lot of, I think, positivity coming out of Alec Ablin's room right now. But overall, Mike, I thought Nico looked fine. I thought, he looks poised, in command of what Tennessee's expecting him to do. They're moving through those routes on airs and those drills that we had, some time to see very effectively.
And I'll just be intrigued, again, a month away from the season actually being here. What's that rotation look like at wide receiver? it's to be determined, but I think there's a lot of playmakers. One playmaker that wasn't full go. He was out here doing as much as he could. Not going to be a big deal. Probably going to be back here in the next couple of practices. Mike Matthews, the 5-star wide receiver, he'll also be pushing for some playing time. Let's go to running back. Another one, obviously, Cam Seldon was in a red non-contact jersey, was doing a lot of the drills that the running backs were doing. But, his workload will increase as Cam goes on. I thought the offensive line, you had, Lance Hurd that was in a left knee brace and was doing some things, but not everything. That was very much of note. You had Dane Davis filling in his spot at left tackle, and then you had Andre Keurig at left guard, Cooper Mates at center, Spraggins at right guard, and then, of course, John Campbell at right tackle. We'll see about John Campbell, or we'll see about Lance Hurd as the days go on, but not a whole lot of takeaways from the offensive line when you're not in pads.
Right. It's hard to have those takeaways. And again, you're doing things, you're working hand position, you're working your feet, your steps, whatever, but it's still so hard to have those takeaways when you're not in pads, and not even just not in full pads, not even in shells.
Yeah.
So, I think some of those guys that you talked about for Tennessee, day one, it's a good indication they're out here. Mike Matthews, I would expect him back by the end of the week, if not at the very first of next week. Yeah. I think it's a very good sign for Lance Hurd that he's out here, right?
Yeah,
Again, yes, obviously there's some concern there when you're not moving around through everything, but at the end of the day, he's out here. And then Cam Seldon, that's a guy continues to be possibly ahead of schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see where it goes. But overall for Tennessee, a pretty healthy football team right now heading into the fall.
Yeah, and there's an acclimation period. They'll have another workout today on Thursday, and then they'll have an off day Friday, and then slowly you'll start seeing these guys put the shells on, put the shoulder pads on, and they get into full pads next week. Scrimmage number 1 is, I think, next Friday, right?
I think so.
Yeah, it's going to be a night scrimmage over at Neyland Stadium, and of course, we'll see how different this team looks from now until then. But a good day one here out. It was actually just in here in the indoor facility because outside Haslam Field's underwater right now. But a good day worked in right here, and of course, check out more here on the podcast Locked On Vols, but always at VolQuest.com.
Passion, drive, patience, the formula for winning championships is what also keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money is back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car that MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive today at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Talking a lot of Tennessee fall camp here on a Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. We'll talk even more Tennessee fall camp on a Friday edition of Locked On Vols and on a Monday edition of Locked On Vols. It is that time of the year. We have reached, we're not into game week yet, but we've made it through the offseason. We actually have stuff to talk about. They're practicing. They'll be scrimmaging at some point next week, and that certainly is an exciting time. We'll keep you all up to date right here on Locked On Vols. Head on over to ESPN.com. Our friend Chris Lowe wrote an article, College Football's Toughest and Easiest Schedules in 2024. Who's got the toughest Power 4 schedule? Who's got the weakest Power 4 schedule? Who's got the toughest Power 4 non-conference schedule? So on and so forth. No surprise here. The toughest overall Power 4 schedule is Florida. And, that's good news for Tennessee because Florida is a rival, no doubt. And how they end that season on that brutal 5-game stretch, Georgia, Texas, LSU, and someone else is in there as well, Florida State. Man, that is really, really tough. That is a, gosh, man, that is a, and of course you got to play Tennessee as well, and you got to open up and play a tough team, right out of the gate too. I mean, Florida's got a challenging schedule. I don't have it in front of me, but I do know it's a really, really challenging schedule, but Tennessee fans are not going to complain there. In case you're wondering, Chris Lowe says the easiest Power 4 schedule is SMU, new member, of course, of the ACC. Now, the toughest overall non-Power 4 schedule goes to Louisiana Monroe. The easiest overall non-Power 4 schedule are the Liberty Flames. And this is the topic of conversation last year in terms of the college football playoff rankings for New Year's Six bowl games. Liberty. Should it have been Liberty or SMU? Should have been Liberty or SMU? Well, Liberty's strength of schedule was not anything, and turns out in 2024 it's not going to be anything either. But if you win all your games, they've got to take one group of 5 team to the playoffs, and Liberty's going to be in good position to, try and be that team. The toughest Power 4 non-conference schedule is considered the USC Trojans. The easiest Power 4 non-conference schedule is Ohio State. Fans of the college football playoff are not going to like that. No doubt about it. Toughest road schedule team from the SEC, it is Mississippi State. Jeff Lebby, first-year head coach. Cross-country trek in week 2 to face Arizona State. In SEC play, Mississippi State will visit 3 top 10 teams. Number 3, Texas. Number 1, Georgia. Number 6, Ole Miss. They've also got a trip to, of course, we know this, number 15, Tennessee. This is according to ESPN's rankings. That's in November. And Mississippi State also has to go and play at Missouri. So Mississippi State is considered the toughest road schedule, and that team is from the SEC. Toughest open to a season, Chris Lowe says that is Clemson. Well, they are playing Georgia, so I would agree with him there. Toughest close to the season, here's that thing I was looking for. That would be the Florida Gators. October 12th, they play 6 of their final 7 games against top 25 teams. 4 of those games are away from home. The end of the season, they'll be playing 5 straight weeks, all against top 15 teams. Goodness gracious, that is just brutal for Florida, but we're not complaining. The cushiest open to the season would be Ole Miss. And I like how he says this. I like how he puts this right here. Rat poison alert. Ole Miss is scheduled to open the season to set up for what should be some serious partying in the Grove. The Rebels, ranked in the top 10 in most preseason polls, play 4 of their first 5 games at home against Furman, Middle Tennessee, Georgia Southern, and Kentucky. Ain't nobody in the universe have an easier opening slate to the season right there. They're going to start off 5-0 easily, no doubt about that. The away game in that stretch is Wake Forest, at Wake Forest. Sign me up for that schedule, Ole Miss. We continue to go on down. We continue to go on down the list here. Chris Lowe's put out a lot of interesting stuff over here at ESPN.com. This one's interesting. Power outages. Ohio State and Syracuse are the only Power 4 schools not playing a non-conference game against another Power 4 school. Didn't know that. Frequent flyer miles. Welcome to the Big Ten, Cal. The Bears got a tough jet lag this season. Okay. September 7th, they're playing at Auburn. September 21st, they're playing at Florida State. October 12th, they're playing at Pitt. November 8th, they're playing at Wake Forest. November 30th, they're playing at SMU. That's a total of 12,136 miles for 5 away games. Whew, that's interesting. Here's one interesting about the SEC. Between SEC newcomers Texas and Oklahoma, the Sooners got the short end of the stick in terms of league play in year 1. 6 of the Sooners' 8 SEC games are against top 25 teams, whereas only 2 of the Longhorns' 8 SEC games are against top 25 foes. That's important to remember because a lot of people think Texas is one of the best teams in the SEC this year. Alabama's SEC 5-pack. Alabama's the only SEC team that faces conference opponents in 5 consecutive weeks. September 28th against Georgia, October 5th against Vanderbilt, October 12th against South Carolina, October 19th against Tennessee, 3rd Saturday in October, and then October 26th at Missouri. So Alabama's the only SEC team that faces conference opponents in 5 consecutive weeks. I wouldn't have known that. That doesn't sound right, but I guess I'll take his word for it. Here's one that I think is pretty interesting. Conference chaos, looking for that one weekend that can shake things up to provide some clarity for the conference races. Week 7 has the definite possibilities. In the SEC, you've got Ole Miss at LSU that week. You have Florida at Tennessee that week. You have Texas and Oklahoma in Dallas that week. So, of course, Florida and Tennessee, that's always a big game. It's a monster game for Tennessee because, well, Tennessee's been on the losing end of that rivalry for quite some time. So Week 7 is going to be a really, really good week across the SEC and in the Big Ten as well. Penn State travels to USC that week. Kansas State takes on Colorado that week as well. So I just thought that article was really, really interesting. I read off a lot of it in terms of what categories Chris Lowe puts these teams, but We kind of knew coming into this year that Florida's got the toughest schedule. We knew that Ole Miss has got an easy schedule. We knew that Georgia's schedule is actually tougher, a lot tougher this year than it's ever been, to be completely honest. We knew that Missouri's got an easy schedule, and we knew that Tennessee, for all intents and purposes, I don't know how you call it an easy schedule playing in the Southeastern Conference, but it's got one of the easier Southeastern Conference schedules. And, that narrative kind of is backed up over at CBS Sports as well. Earlier this week, they put out the ranking of the toughest schedules in all the SEC. And CBS Sports has, of course, Florida at number 1, having the toughest schedule. Mississippi State having the next toughest schedule at number 2. Oklahoma's at number 3. They have games against Houston and Tulane, 2 pretty stout non-conference games before you even start in the SEC play. Georgia's actually got the 4th toughest schedule in the SEC this year, according to CBS Sports. You got to play Clemson in the opener. Got to play Georgia Tech. And a lot of people are saying Georgia Tech's going to be a little bit better than people realize. I will believe that when I see it. And then, of course, you have all those games in the Southeastern Conference schedule. South Carolina comes in at number 5, Arkansas at 6, Vanderbilt at 7, Kentucky at 8, Alabama at 9, LSU at 10, Texas A&M at 11, Auburn at 12, Tennessee at 13. Interesting. This is what they say about Tennessee's schedule, which CBS Sports says is the 13th toughest schedule in the league, or if we rephrase that, it is the 4th easiest schedule in the league this year. Quote, Tennessee has college football playoff hopes in the schedule to get there. NC State is going to give the Volunteers all they can handle in Charlotte, and it doesn't get much more difficult than going to face Oklahoma and Norman to open SEC play, especially since UT hasn't been great away from Neyland Stadium under Coach Josh Heupel. But Tennessee also plays Arkansas and Vanderbilt on the road, so that balances the difficulty scales a bit. There's also the standard trappings of Alabama and Georgia. Tennessee will have to go at least 1-1 in those games to reach its goals. You got to go 2-1 in those games against, if you throw Florida in there. You got to go, in my opinion, 3-1 in those games if you throw Oklahoma in that realm. Behind Tennessee in this list is Texas at 14, Ole Miss at 15, and Missouri at 16. No surprise there. Those 3 schedules, those 3 slates are pretty easy compared to most SEC teams, Tennessee included, entering the 2024 season. So I found a lot of that interesting, talking about schedule talk, and I want to throw some of that in here as we concluded our show here on a Thursday. Plenty more to come. We'll be back on the practice field early Thursday morning. I'll be out there reporting, and what I see, some of the big notes that I've gathered, who's making plays, injury situations, all that and more. I'll take notes on all that, and we'll tell you all about it on Friday's edition of Locked On Vols. Can't thank you enough for being here. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. If you're watching us, you like it, tell a friend. Let's build this show up. Subscribe on the YouTube channel. Subscribe and download these episodes on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We got to grow this show as we get closer and closer to football season. Can't thank you guys enough for making Locked On Vols your first listen. I'm Eric Cain. Appreciate you as always. Have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.